Welcome back, vinyl community. Time once again to pay tribute to a recently departed reggae legend. I'm going to be talking today about Larry Marshall. My voice isn't quite there, I'm getting over being sick. But we're going to keep the vibes going just the same as before and let the music do the talking as much as possible. Larry Marshall was born Fitzroy Marshall in 1945 in the parish of St. Anne's, Jamaica, kind of a rural parish. It was also the birthplace of Bob Marley, Burning Spear, many other notable reggae icons. Must have been something in the water. But grew up influenced by singing in the church. That kind of revival sound influenced him. Also, being from the country, he has kind of that rural tinge to his vocals. You can always kind of pick that out in Jamaican reggae in the 70s, as opposed to the more urban sound. By 1957, came to Kingston to live, began making forays into the music industry. By the early 60s, he was performing live and recording. Moved through some various producers like Clancy Eccles, Prince Buster, Justin Yap's Top Deck label, which was notable for a number of recordings by the Skatalites. But by the late 60s, Larry Marshall had settled into Clement Seymour Coxsone Dodd's Studio One label, often called the Motown of Jamaica. And there he cut a series of recordings that not only defined his career, but proved to be cornerstones of the developing reggae music itself. So we're going to get right off into the music here. Various artists LP called Reggae-matic Sounds. I've showed this in a previous video. Larry Marshall is on here. It's a group credited as the Freedom Singers, kind of an ad hoc group of whoever was handy, but it is Larry Marshall on lead, and you can distinguish his vocals once you know it. It's got quite a melancholy tinge to it. There's the label. Kind of downbeat, melancholy songs of love, heartbreak, also roots. We'll get into some roots down the road. This is the late Rocksteady days, 1968-ish, going into what we now know as reggae. Voice of Larry Marshall on deck. Sweet Sensation. Very gentle. Oh, what a sweet sensation. You can hear that revival church tradition in there. Moving on. Studio One 10-inch style. Studio One 10-inch, there's the sleeve. These are a series of reissues that came out late 1990s, I guess, early 2000s. This one has 4 songs by Larry Marshall. Let's Make It Up, It Makes Me Feel, Free Eye Lord, and True Believer. We're going to hear It Makes Me Feel. Soulful vibes. Sounds like Alton Ellis on harmonies here. Beautiful harmonies. me feel. Makes me feel oh so bad, but it's oh so good. Also for Studio One, Larry Marshall would eventually release his debut LP under the name Presenting Larry Marshall. This is CD reissue on the Heartbeat label from the 1990s. This issue never came out on vinyl. The original LP is quite expensive. And Larry Marshall began recording, or this includes a series of tunes like Mean Girl, Throw Me Corn, other classic songs, the rhythms of which would be reused over and over again for years, decades to come. Probably even still today there's somebody still doing over those rhythm tracks. But when you hear them, you know the original is Larry Marshall, Throw Me Corn, for example. But the one that really put Larry Marshall on the map and reggae music on the map was one called Nanny Goat. Some consider this the very first true reggae song. Not the first one to mention the name reggae in a title. That was Toots and the Maytals Do the Reggae. But this is one of the contenders to the claim of being the one with the true reggae beat. Bop and the Belltones' No More Heartaches is another contender. Larry Marshall, Nanny Goat. A lot of these songs are built around Jamaican folk sayings, proverbs. Anybody who was listening would understand what he was talking about. Not gonna let you go. Make you feel alright. Following his time at Studio One, Larry Marshall departed, unhappy with his remuneration situation. He was apparently paid only 29 UK pounds for Nanny Goat, that song we just heard, the foundation song of reggae, that's a historic song that's been reused over and over and over again. While at Studio One, Larry Marshall was also an apprentice engineer and was actually at the control desk recording classic songs of the era like Horace Andy doing Skylarking, Freddie McKay recording Picture on the Wall, some of the early Burning Spear recordings, Dennis Brown doing No Man is an Island. So a lot of those classics, he was the one recording it to tape. Larry Marshall went on after Studio One. The Presenting LP came out around 1973, with most tracks recorded a few years before. Larry Marshall moved on to Carlton Patterson's Black and White label and eventually set up his own label called Amanda. Still unhappy with kind of his financial situation working for others. We're going to get into some Roots now. It's a reissue on Only Roots out of France, tune called Dread in a Rome. Larry Marshall in a Roots style. Come home from Rome. It dread out day. Rome here is a symbol of corruption, oppression. I could not stop the pollution. Dig those horns. Rome is for the Romans. Rome is not for I. While working with Carlton Patterson for his Black and White label, Larry Marshall recorded another one of those crucial songs that proved to be a watershed moment in reggae music history. He recorded a song called I Admire You, and eventually proved to be an LP of the same name, released around 1975. Larry self-produced it after the initial sessions which resulted in that single for Carlton Patterson. This again is the Heartbeat CD reissue, I Admire You. And this is actually a Jamaican 7-inch Larry Marshall, I Admire You. It's got sound markings from being played on a sound system at the time. And I also have it on a UK pressing, also on Black and White. Quite a different label, but again with sound markings on it. And what was notable about this record, not only it's a terrific tune on its own, but the B-side, dub version, Watergate Rock, was credited to King Tubby's. This was one of the very first occasions when the dub engineer King Tubby would be credited by name on the B-side of a record and helped to establish his reputation and lead to classic LPs like King Tubby Meets the Rockers Uptown. So we're going to close out my look at Larry Marshall with I Admire You and a bit of its classic dub. Larry Marshall was still active. He worked in construction for many years after kind of falling off the recording scene due to financial considerations. Worked in construction, moved to the US, was still active, appearing and recording custom dub plates until very recently. Passed away August 25th, 2017, I believe. His legacy is secure. Hey girl, I admire you. From a point of view.
From the very first time I bless my eyes on you, I picture you to be my bride. Oh baby, oh girl, it's because you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know, you don't know, you don't know what is love.
You don't know what is love.
Every time I see you, my temperature gets higher.
Temperature getting much higher.
I love you, girl. God in heaven know I really love you, baby. Oh, girl.
And dubwise, Watergate Rock as we close out. There's also a full-length dub LP to the I Admire You album. I Admire You in dub. Released on Motion Records. King Tubby at the controls. Rhythm come forward. cavernous bass. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Peace.